Back in the early 1900s, the golf landscape looked much different than it does today. Golf courses were minimal and dominated by private clubs with high society types. Amateurs were the most celebrated players in America, and professionals were seen as dangerous rebels who sought to spoil this great game. But a man named Walter Hagen was determined to transform that. Coming from a working-class family, he infiltrated the aristocratic amateur-dominated sport and changed the direction of golf like few people, if any, have done. His achievements exceed the 45 official wins and a never-equaled match play streak at the PGA Championship. Walter demanded that professional golfers be treated equally. On multiple occasions, he threatened to withdraw from tournaments after subpar treatment. He even parked a car right in front of the clubhouse at the Open after they forbade him from using the facilities. For the rest of the event, Hagen ate food, drank champagne, and relaxed in that car.
I say Hagen did more for the pros than anybody else that ever lived.
But he did more than fix the poor state of professional golf. Sir Walter massively expanded the sport's appeal and single-handedly grew the game by giving thousands of exhibitions worldwide. He did all of this with a style that others could only compliment, a larger-than-life personality, and a self-taught swing capable of beating anyone. Hagen once defeated Bobby Jones so severely in a match that Mr. Jones said it was his most impressive defeat. However, it wasn't all serious golf for Walter. He would become famous for his parties and especially enjoyed female companionship.
I said to Hagen, I says, how can you remember the names of all these women that you meet? He says, I'll teach you a lesson. I can't remember their name. Just say, hello, sugar. I says, that covers them all.
Falling in love with the good life, he once said, you're only here for a short visit. Don't hurry, don't worry, and be sure to smell the flowers along the way. Walter Hagen smelt those flowers, all while leading professional golf to the promised land. This is how the unstoppable, charismatic professional challenged the elite, broke down barriers, and when it was all said and done, conquered golf.
He was a great match player. He could go all over the place and shoot par.
He alone did open the door of the clubhouse to the professional tournament golfer.
He won the British Open, got the $500 first prize, gave the $500 first prize to his caddy and his camel's hair coat that the caddy had been admiring. This was Hagen.
Walter Hagen was born in Rochester, New York on December 21, 1892. His dad was a blacksmith while his mom stayed home to raise him and his siblings. They had a decent life, but little money was left for extras. Filled with abundant energy, young Hagen engaged in what most American boys did at the time: baseball. He fell in love with the game, but something else soon intrigued him. During the summer of 1900, the young boy noticed a strange-looking building, so he ran up the large hill to get a better look. The huge structure belonged to the local private golf course, the Country Club of Rochester. From that spot on the hill, Walter could see inside the massive windows, and what he witnessed astonished him. People were laughing, dancing, and drinking. Their clothes were extravagant. They didn't dress like anybody he knew, and his family certainly didn't act with such exuberance. Walter climbed that hill daily for the next few weeks and looked down at the country club. He felt disappointed in how his family lived comparatively and decided to get closer to the club's action, so his father's friend got him a job there. While he learned the ropes of how to be a good caddy, one thing he hadn't done yet was play golf, because caddies weren't allowed to at the private course. So he took a beaten-up golf club and headed to a nearby pasture. Golf instantly captivated Hagen, especially when he struck a ball cleanly for the first time, and promised himself he'd acquire more tools of the trade trade. While hitting balls was enjoyable, Hagen's favorite club was the putter, and he would spend countless hours simply putting a ball back and forth. However, all that golf practice took up much of his time, causing school to fall by the wayside. One day, while his teacher explained a boring English assignment, Hagen looked out the window and saw golfers playing on a nearby field. The 7th grader felt an overwhelming urge to leave. When his teacher's back was turned, he exited through the open first-floor window, rarely returning in the following months. With more time for golf, he became the top caddy at the Rochester Club. This opportunity allowed him to play the course on his days off and caddy for the most established members, like Harry Strong. One day, Walter carried his bag during an 18-hole match. On the first hole, Harry told Hagen to run to the clubhouse and fetch a pitcher full of cocktails. After the second hole, Harry asked for another pitcher. Then 2 holes later, he requested another. Harry Strong's plan was simple: get his opponent drunk and easily win. Hagen shouldn't have taken more than 10 minutes for each trip, but he savored the moment since he was finally inside the clubhouse, a building where caddies weren't allowed, and the very place he had looked down on from the hill all those years ago. Being inside left a strong impression on Walter. He longed for a life filled with abundance and extravagance, and he would make that his mission. Oh, by the way, Harry Strong's plan failed. His drunk opponent sent golf balls all over the course, but Harry, being a truly terrible golfer, still lost the match. He didn't possess a good game, but Walter Hagen did, and his skills kept improving. Hagen never took formal golf lessons, but observed the best players around him, imitating their techniques and hitting ball after ball until he mastered them. These observational abilities were a superpower, benefiting him and instilling self-belief. But Walter Hagen had another reason to be confident. Being almost 5 feet 11 inches tall, much taller than the average height for an American male at that time, and weighing a stocky 175 pounds, Walter stood out from the crowd, and as a result was promoted to assistant pro at work, where he learned to repair and build golf clubs, eventually designing a full set and calling them his strange weapons. With these in hand, Hagen experienced his first taste of competition, leading a team of caddies to victory against another group. Winning brought him some praise and glory, but he craved more, so Walter aimed at the country's premier tournament, the 1912 U.S. Open, which took place in nearby Buffalo, New York. However, his boss, the head pro at the Rochester Club, didn't want the 19-year-old to enter, thinking Walter would be destroyed, and persuaded him not to. He took his boss's advice, but to prove him wrong, the two played a practice round on the U.S. Open course, where Hagen shot a 73. After shooting that low round, he felt inspired and took a boat across Lake Ontario to Toronto 2 weeks later to compete in the Canadian Open. He didn't win or come close to winning, but finished 11th out of 100 entrants, an excellent performance considering this was Walter's first professional tournament. When he returned home, he discovered that the Rochester head pro was leaving. The club offered Hagen the position. Although he wanted to try his hand at being a tournament golfer, he was aware of the risks, and the head pro job paid more, allowing him to better support his family. For the final time in his life, Walter Hagen chose the safe route and accepted the promotion. However, his dreams of golf fame were still not dead. Walter Hagen had a great time in 1912. He succeeded at his job and as head pro held one of the top positions there. However, work couldn't fulfill his craving to play in another tournament. He persuaded the Rochester Club officials to grant him 4 days off to compete in the 1913 U.S. Open at Brookline Country Club in Boston. In addition to Hagen, pros from Britain were present, hoping to win and take the U.S. Open trophy back to their homeland. Harry Vardon and Ted Ray were regarded as two of the best players in the game, especially Vardon, who was a 5-time British Open champion by then, which is simply referred to as the Open. The competition would be steep, but Walter didn't care. This was evident when he entered the Brookline grounds and saw a group of American players. With a big grin, he confidently shouted, "My name is Walter Hagen. I've come from Rochester to help you fellows stop Vardon and Ray." Having no idea who he was, the American players took one look at Hagen, roared with laughter, and pushed him away from the group. Hagen was being overlooked and disrespected, as was another golfer whom nobody expected to win, let alone perform well. The 20-year-old American golfer Francis Ouimet, whose only claim to fame at that time was winning his state amateur. Though neither was thought highly of, both qualified for the tournament. The 1913 U.S. Open spanned 2 days and comprised 4 rounds. On the first tee of round 1, Walter smashed the ball down the fairway, unbothered by the event's significance. He completed the first 2 rounds and was 5 over par. Brutal rain hit Friday, but Walter handled the conditions, finishing just 2 shots back of the leaders. For the final 18 holes, only 2 golfers could stop a British victory: a 20-year-old amateur with a child as his caddy, and a man from Rochester who was so unknown that the newspapers couldn't even spell his name right, referring to him as Willie Hagen. Willie, or Walter's hopes of winning the United States Open, ended Friday afternoon on the wet, soggy 14th hole with a double bogey. However, he finished in a tie for 4th, a great showing. An American still had a chance to win. The amateur Francis Ouimet ended up tied with the 2 British greats from Jersey. Before Walter returned to Rochester, he bid farewell to Ouimet and said, "You did it, kid, and you'll do it again tomorrow." Which is precisely what occurred, and what came to be seen as the beginning of the Great Awakening in American golf. Francis Ouimet defeated Harry Vardon and Ted Ray. When word spread nationwide, baseball news was suddenly replaced by golf headlines. And although he didn't win, Hagen left Boston confident in his play. He also sought revenge for how other American players treated him, and told club members in Rochester that he would win the US Open next year. Considering what Hagen was doing on a golf course, it's surprising, but the 21-year-old was facing a serious life crisis. He knew playing golf could offer an exciting life, but he also frequently thought about his first love: baseball. Hagen aspired to try his hand as a professional ball player, so in February 1914, he purchased a train ticket to Florida, the training site for the Philadelphia Phillies. The manager tried him in the outfield and liked how far he could huck a ball, telling him to work on his arm for a year and then return to try again. So Walter spent the remainder of winter and spring doing anything but playing golf, seemingly forgetting his bold claim about winning the 1914 US Open. However, everything changed one sunny day in July when a club member walked into the pro shop, inquiring whether he would still enter the tournament. Walter said no. The man told him that if he entered, he would pay for his trip to Chicago, where the tournament took place that year. Hagen, not one to turn down a free trip, accepted the offer, giving him just 3 weeks to prepare his game. The days flew by and Walter boarded the train for what he believed would be his final golf tournament. The US Open occurred at Midlothian Country Club. However, he nearly didn't arrive at the course for his first tournament round. The night before, he and a friend decided to eat as many lobsters and oysters as possible. By midnight, Hagen regretted that decision, spending hours becoming best friends with the toilet. The hotel doctor diagnosed his illness as food poisoning. Still sick by sunrise, Hagen slowly headed to the first tee. What could have been an unforgettable round turned out to be anything but, and the legend of Walter Hagen's wildness off the tee began that day. On the very first hole, his drive carried over a small lake, but ended deep in the rough. He hooked the ball so poorly on the second hole that it nearly took a spectator's head off. Drive after drive headed toward the trees, rough, or the fans, and yet he was still shooting a low score. Walter recalls, "Every drive was in the rough, yet on the recovery shots, I was deadlier than the food poisoning from which I was suffering." His putting skills were also impressive. He sank 3 putts from 25 to 40 feet, and when the round concluded, Hagen shot a 68, breaking the course record by 3 strokes. In the afternoon, he shot a 74 and led by 1. On Friday, he continued to hold on to the lead after 54 holes. On 15 during the final round, his ball once again veered into the left rough. As he walked down the fairway, Hagen noticed an attractive blonde woman watching him from the gallery. He strolled over and asked her out on a date, saying he would pick her up by 8 p.m., win or lose. With evening plans secured, Walter finished by birdieing the 18th hole, which he did in all 4 rounds. Amateur golfer Chick Evans had a chance to tie him on the 18th green, where Walter observed. The final putt was struck, and to the gallery's disappointment and Hagen's amusement, it didn't drop. In just his 3rd tournament, Walter Hagen became the 1914 United States Open champion. The disrespect shown to Walter by fellow players the previous year would never occur again, and to cap off the day, Hagen spent an all-nighter with the blonde woman he had just met. The following morning, jumping up from his chair while eating breakfast, Walter said, "Good night, I'm the champion of the whole goddamn country." Indeed, he was, and this victory would alter how the world saw the 21-year-old, as he was no longer some unknown. Offers to do golf exhibitions started appearing, paying more than his job did, so the thought of playing professional baseball wouldn't interest him again. American golf was about to explode in popularity, and the Hague, as he would be called, became the man to lead its rapid rise. While American golf was beginning to grow, Walter's win was overshadowed by European conflicts. World War I was upon them, and golf tournaments became non-existent there. This didn't affect Hagen personally, as he had many opportunities at home. For instance, he started giving golf clinics at local clubs, earning $100 for a few hours' work. Considering a brand new home in 1914 cost around $3,000 where he lived, this was good money. But he didn't spend that money on a new home. He was still living with his parents, so he expanded his wardrobe instead. He took those stylish clothes with him on a 1915 trip to the northwestern United States, where he gave golf exhibitions in Washington and Oregon, and won an event in San Francisco by 8 strokes. Walter carried this momentum into the US Open, but wasn't a factor. The Hague didn't care too much, as exhibitions kept him busy for the year. In 1916, something significant happened. Professional golfers were sick of being treated as second-class citizens compared to the amateur players. Pros were not allowed to change in locker rooms or eat in the clubhouses at most private clubs. Therefore, a need emerged to create an organization representing the professional game and to organize sanctioned tournaments. This would become the Professional Golfers Association, or the PGA. Walter Hagen, one of 35 original charter members, was a key contributor to advancing this project. A signature tournament, the PGA Championship, was also established, with the first event occurring on October 1916 in New York. This was a match play event, which differed from the more common stroke play. Hagen reached the semifinals and was defeated, though losing never mattered as much, as he always had something else to do, such as supporting World War I through planned exhibitions. He still won 3 official tournaments in 1916, including the Western Open, which was regarded as a premier tournament of the time. He also met a woman he was quite fond of that year, Margaret. They would get married in 1917 and have a son together. Because Margaret came from high-class society, she helped Hagen by connecting him with the most influential people. This opened up many new business opportunities for him. While home life seemed pretty good, Walter was itching to get back into tournament golf, so he headed out in 1918, where he won the North and South Open. After the victory, the Hague was offered the head pro position at Oakland Hills Country Club, a new golf course in Michigan. He took the job, left Rochester, and moved his family to Detroit. This decision marked the beginning of the Walter Hagen the world would come to know. Detroit was booming in 1918, and Walter relished everything it offered. His childhood dreams had come true. The affluent and sophisticated men and women regarded him as an equal. Hagen, in turn, spent more time socializing and started drinking and smoking, which hastened the end of his marriage. Nonetheless, there are problems from the very beginning. Margaret Hagen once recalled,
"He goes away and writes me pages and pages of golf, but I want romance."
Walter sucked at writing love letters, and apparently, Margaret couldn't cook. One day after returning home, Walter noticed a plate of food on the table. It was a ham that resembled an old baseball glove. Turning to his wife, he said, "We got that old hacked ham again?" As swiftly as it began, the marriage was fizzling out, and Hagen shifted his attention back to his true passion as full-time competitive golf was set to return. World War I was over. Walter focused on one event, the 1919 U.S. Open held at Braeburn Country Club in Massachusetts, although it appeared he wasn't going to win. After 54 holes, Walter Hagen was 5 shots behind the hometown leader, Mike Brady. But Brady faltered in the final round, allowing Walter to catch up. After sending his drive down the 18th fairway, the Hague hit his approach shot straight at the flag, landing within 10 feet. This putt was to win the U.S. Open. The crowd, lukewarm to Hagen, turned angry when he began gesturing toward the main building, wanting Brady to come outside and witness his victory. Nervous Mike Brady slowly came out as Walter lined everything up. Hagen hit the putt, which rolled to the hole but lipped out. Tomorrow, the two will play in an 18-hole playoff. To prepare, Walter partied with a woman he met at the golf course and, apparently, though this is debated, didn't get any sleep. In the morning, he dashed off to Braeburn. Mike Brady had already been there practicing for 2 hours. On the first tee, Walter saw signs of nervousness in Mike's demeanor, so he engaged in something he'd be known for: head games. "If I were you," Hagen told Brady, "I'd roll down my sleeves, because everyone can see your forearms quivering." As golf writer Bernard Darwin wrote, Hagen was a ruthless competitor, using almost any means to win. After the turn, the Hague was 3 up. Then, on the 17th, he fell into trouble. His tee shot missed the green and ended up in a muddy bank, almost fully embedded. It was a horrendous lie. Not wanting to play the shot, Walter said that a spectator must have stepped on the ball, which is why it was so deep in thick mud. But an official dismissed that, saying no fans were there. Thinking quickly, Hagen had one more trick up his sleeve, claiming that he couldn't identify if it were his ball because only a tiny patch of white was showing. The officials begrudgingly agreed and allowed Walter to lift the ball to see if it was his. As he did and confirmed the ball, the mud collapsed inwards. This allowed Hagen to play the shot from a much cleaner lie. He still struggled, but this saved him from something catastrophic. Through golf skills, showmanship, and some rule knowledge, Walter Hagen had his second U.S. Open title. When he returned to Detroit as a hero, Oakland Hills hosted a massive party. Hagen gave a speech saying he was grateful for what the club had done for him, but that he was resigning as head pro. The music stopped and the celebration came to a halt. Golf professionals were typically affiliated with a club. However, Hagen was about to break that mold because he did not want to be associated with any club, teach, or work in the pro shop. He aspired to be a full-time professional tournament golfer. Walter's decision would offer him opportunities that no player had ever experienced before, and he established the foundation for what professional golf is today. Walter Hagen, the 2-time U.S. Open winner, was now the most famous golfer in America. As such, he embarked on a coast-to-coast tour, playing in tournaments and giving exhibitions. During these, Hagen played matches against other top players or challengers. He charged spectators $1 each to watch and often earned $1,000 for a day's work. This kept him so busy that he missed the 1919 PGA Championship, which was a big blow to the tournament, but Hagen could not resist the big checks he was earning. He continued buying golf clothes and new sets of clubs. But Walter realized his resume lacked a significant title. He was a two-time US Open champion, but had not won the major title in Britain. Although he had never participated in the event and was aware that no American-born player had won it, Hagen was seriously intrigued. In late May 1920, Walter sailed first class to the Open Championship. The tournament occurred at Royal Cinque Ports, a course called Deal Golf Club by locals. After a long trip, Hagen finally arrived and entered the clubhouse. Suddenly, a man shouted at him,
"You're in the wrong place,"
telling Sir Walter,
"As a professional, you'll be using the pro shop to dress."
He had been denied access many times in America, but now, as a two-time US Open champion, the Hague felt he should be treated accordingly. Angry, Walter left and did not go to the pro shop. Instead, he and his driver parked a long Daimler car in front of the building entrance. Hagen changed his clothes and ate food inside the vehicle. The furious club manager begged him to move it, but he refused. Due to this high-rolling, rule-breaking attitude, such actions earned him the nickname Sir Walter. Deal's club management couldn't handle him, but the golf course would. He had never seen such brutal conditions like this in America, and Hagen's wayward drives were headed even more offline due to the wind. Add to that the brutally rock-hard greens, and his score sank to the bottom of the leaderboard. After the first 18, Hagen enjoyed champagne and caviar in the rented car and headed out for another beating. After 4 miserable rounds, he finished in a tie for 53rd, 26 strokes back. On his way out, the Deal Club manager sarcastically said,
"Sorry you didn't do better, but golf is challenging here."
Walter told him not to worry, as his name would be on that cup one day. Not wanting to return home without any hardware, Walter went to France to play in the French Open. And if he thought his treatment at Deal was poor, the French tournament was on another level. Hagen and the other professionals were directed to change clothes in a still active horse stable. The odor was disgusting and hundreds of flies permeated it. Walter left the horrific conditions, found the French club's president, and told him, "We professionals get to change in the clubhouse or else we are going to withdraw." The president didn't want that kind of embarrassment, and for the first time, a French golf club opened its doors to professional golfers. Filled with that feeling of success, Walter Hagen went on to win the tournament. It wasn't the Open Championship claret jug, but he was bringing home a trophy. After returning on a ship, he prepared for the 1920 US Open at the Inverness Club in Ohio. Hagen finished 11th, although this was a significant tournament in golf history. It marked the first time that the soon-to-be legends Bobby Jones and Gene Sarazen competed in their national open. And Sir Walter did something else at this tournament that would massively impact golf's future. Just like he did in Europe, Hagen informed the Inverness Club that he and the professionals would be changing in the clubhouse, and if not, Sir Walter would park his Rolls-Royce in front of the building. Fearing bad press, they permitted professionals to change inside the club, dine in the restaurant, sleep in provided rooms, and drive rented vehicles. For the first time, the US Open treated professional golfers just like amateurs. This act began to break down the barriers of golf in America, and in the years that followed, the professionals were seen as equals. Grateful for what Inverness did for them, the pros bought an 8-foot chime clock and placed it inside the club. These were the words inscribed on a brass plate. God measures men by what they are, not by what they in wealth possess. This vibrant message chimes afar, the voice of Inverness. If you've watched this far, please consider subscribing. Why? It will help me attract sponsors and allow me to create more and better content. Thank you. While the marriage between the Hagens was over for a few years, as evidenced by Walter sleeping around with other women, divorce became official in 1921, and the judge granted Margaret full custody of their son. To escape his feelings about how his marriage ended, Sir Walter traveled back overseas to give exhibitions and play in the Open. He finished 6th at St. Andrews, and considering how he placed 53rd the previous year, it proves he was figuring out how to play links golf. After returning home, he finished a disappointing second in the US Open. However, the 1921 PGA Championship was still in play. Hagen had been banned from entering the previous year because the PGA was upset that he had not shown up in 1919. Inspired by that, Sir Walter easily won the first match. He made it to the finals without much effort and won the tournament run by an organization he had helped start. He was the PGA champion. The Hague continued his success the following year, winning 3 times before heading overseas once again to play in the only major he had not won, the 1922 Open, played at Royal St. George's in England. This was not the same links golf rookie who looked lost, but a seasoned professional who understood what it took to win on any course. As such, he quickly qualified for the tournament and shot an opening round of 76. He turned it on for the second round, finishing with a 73 and was leading by 2. The local press, who still seemingly despised Walter because of the Daimler car incident, ran a story titled "Golf Championship in Danger." Legend has it that the weather became so bad the next day that some golfers decided never to play the game again. Hagen did his best, but struggled. He was now 2 shots back going into the final 18 holes. Given the horrific weather, Hagen's final round of 72 was impressive. This placed him at the top of the leaderboard, and now he had to wait to see if it would hold. Like a crushing blow to some British supporters, they witnessed Walter Hagen become the Open champion, the first American-born champion golfer of the year. As usual, he gave his winnings to his caddy and headed home, a legend. This breakthrough at Royal St. George's was the success Americans craved, and it opened the floodgates at the Open. American-born players would win it 8 times in the next 11 years. Back home, Walter Hagen's celebration was legendary. At this point, the 29-year-old had won an Open, 2 US Opens, 2 Western Opens, and a PGA. After the partying, the Hague started on his biggest exhibition tour, earning an estimated $4,000 weekly plus other side bets. These bets were often unique and added some fun. Once, after playing a match, Hagen suggested that he and a competitor hit a golf ball from where they stood outside the clubhouse back to the toilet bowl in their hotel room. So off they went, down a main street, across lawns, over fences, into the hotel lobby, and eventually to their room. Hagen lost when his friend sank a chip shot off the seat, landing in the water. After losing the occasional bet but genuinely enjoying himself, he shocked his friends in 1923 by marrying again, this time to a woman named Edna. She came from money and loved high-class travel, though how much Walter loved her was up for debate. A week before the two married, Hagen called his friend and said, "Get me a girl, get your wife, and we'll have a party tomorrow night." The plans were set, and when they met at a hotel, Walter whispered to his friend, "Don't say anything to the lady, but I'm getting married next week." Walter and Edna tied the knot on April 30th. However, the 1923 golf season was off to a rough start. After finishing second at the Open and US Open, Sir Walter attended the PGA Championship held at Pelham Country Club in New York. In what was called the finest match of the 1920s, Sir Walter faced off against defending champion Gene Sarazen in the finals. The match between the two friends quickly became heated. Hagen argued about Sarazen moving leaves around his ball on the 6th green, and Gene kept telling Walter to hole 1-foot putts. Usually a putt that short was conceded in match play. At one point, the 30-year-old Hagen was down by 3, but he clawed back into a tie with Sarazen. The match went into extras, and on hole 2, a drivable par 4, Walter went for the green, but ended near a small greenside bunker. It was Gene's turn, and he sent the ball wildly into a greenkeeper's cottage and nearly out of bounds. Both men looked for the ball, and when Walter found one, he said it must be Sarazen's because it, quote, has spaghetti sauce on it. This was a jab at his Italian heritage. In one of the few times that Hagen's verbal shots backfired, a pissed-off Sarazen stroked a pure shot from a nearly impossible lie, leaving his ball just 4 feet from the hole. A stunned Walter chunked the chip shot into the bunker and failed to hole out, meaning Gene Sarazen was a back-to-back PGA champion. In response to this majorless season, some newspapers thought the Hague was falling behind the younger players, and that at 30 years old, it was time for him to slow down. Thankfully, that's not what Walter Hagen did. In fact, the second half of his professional golf career was maybe more magical than the first. He would go on a tear at the PGA and dominate in a match, the greatest amateur golfer the world has ever known. After failing to win a golf major last season, Sir Walter needed to relax and reset his mind, but he wasn't about to go meditate in a forest. Instead, he refreshed it by socializing with high society or hanging out with his friend, baseball star Babe Ruth. Recharged, Hagen headed to Royal Liverpool Golf Club for the 1924 Open. Hagen displayed what spectators called one of the best putting performances they had seen, often sinking 20-footers for par, and after 4 days, it came down to the 18th hole. With the wind at his back, Walter smoked a 300-yard drive. His second shot went long, and the chip came up short, 9 feet left. Any thoughts of Walter's winning ways slowing down were instantly crushed as he rolled the ball in and was once again Open champion. Hagen stayed for a while and then sailed back home, ready to take this momentum into that year's PGA. He thought it would come down to him and Saracen again, but Jean lost in the second round. Hagen cruised to the finals where he cemented the season as PGA champion. By this time, the 31-year-old had 2 of every major tournament. He celebrated his successful season with a trip to Canada. After traveling around and giving exhibitions in Vancouver, Victoria, and Edmonton, he headed to Winnipeg. The hotel was instructed to reserve their best suite, and the manager was told to stock up with drinks, food, and local golfers for a big party. When Hagen arrived, there were only 30 people there, so he invited all the hotel staff to join. Walter would always do things like this. After returning home, he decided not to travel overseas in 1925 and lost in the US Open again, but he confidently entered the year's final major, the PGA Championship, held at Olympia Fields Country Club in Chicago. Before the event started, Walter told other entrants how assured he was, saying,
"Which one of you boys is going to be second?"
And this tournament featured more head games from Hagen. For example, he conceded his opponent's putts of 5 feet in the quarterfinals all day, but down the stretch, he stopped conceding those, which added more pressure to the already tricky length, helping Hagen to win. In the semifinals, he arrived with no time to spare, not bothering to warm up and, seemingly, still intoxicated from the night before, but he ended up winning anyway. And in the finals, Walter sank a 70-foot heartbreaker, cruising to another victory and winning the tournament for a second straight year. He celebrated in his usual way, with late-night entertainment. By 3 a.m., he was in the back of a cab still holding the PGA Championship's Wanamaker trophy. As they drove down the streets, Walter saw some friends outside a nightclub and quickly got the driver to pull over. He paid him and got out of the car. Turning to the driver again, Hagen gave him $5 more to return the trophy to the hotel he was staying at. It was the last time Walter would see it. As 1925 drew to a close, an idea resonated throughout the world of golf. People were eager to determine the best player in the world, Walter Hagen or Bobby Jones, the leading amateur golfer. By this stage in his life, Jones had secured the US Open title and won 2 US amateurs. Bobby made no money from golf and grew up, like most good amateur players at the time, in an upper-class neighborhood belonging to a private club. And although golf's professional standing improved, many fans and media were convinced that the best players were amateurs. Hagen felt a deep resentment toward this and was surprised that Jones was quickly becoming the face of golf, a sport Hagen dominated for 10 years. So a match was set to decide who was better. The Hague knew the pressure was on because losing here would severely damage his reputation. He would receive $11,800 regardless of the outcome since Jones was an amateur. However, Bob made money in a roundabout way. The match would be played over 72 holes at 2 separate courses. Jones picked Whitfield Estates Country Club in Florida. At the time, Bobby was a real estate agent and the golf course was close to the properties he was selling. This match would drive massive interest to the area, so strangely, it was putting money in his pocket. On February 28, 1926, the two met on the first tee. In what would become a common occurrence, Hagen's shot ended up in the trees. Jones, who had one of the most beautiful flowing swings in history, sent his ball down the fairway. But Hagen's recovery shot helped him win the first hole. At the end of the first 18, Walter Hagen led by 3. After lunch, they went out again. On the 6th hole, Bobby Jones's approach shot was excellent, leaving him just 10 feet away. After another wayward drive, Hagen was behind a tree. He then pulled off a shot you would see a local hack do, although with better results. He practically topped the ball with slice spin, barely getting it off the ground. It defied logic, rolling into the bunker and then onto the green, leaving him 4.5 feet away. He was now 4 up. A few holes later, he blasted his ball out of a small swamp, soaking his pants with water and mud, and watched as it rolled inside Jones's ball. Bobby just shook his head. After 36 holes, Sir Walter was 8 up. Mr. Jones was seeing why he excelled in match play. Hagen could break a competitor's spirit, not just with verbal jabs or showmanship, but also with remarkable recovery play and putting. The final 36 holes were played in Florida at the Hagen-picked Pasadena Golf Club 1 week later. Bobby had hopes of a comeback, but Walter eliminated those dreams with a 70-foot birdie putt on the 2nd. By the 25th hole, it was all over. Walter Hagen beat Bobby Jones 12 holes up with 11 to play. Mr. Jones called it the most impressive trouncing he ever got, and Hagen said this was his greatest achievement in golf. The Hague donated $5,000 to St. Petersburg Hospital and gave Jones a set of diamond cufflinks for his troubles. Bobby most likely wanted a rematch, but sadly, it would never occur. The U.S. Golf Association heard Jones profited from the match through those real estate dealings. If he took on Hagen again, he would have to relinquish his amateur status. Jones decided to remain an amateur, and the rematch wouldn't happen. Maybe slightly hurt by how badly he lost, Mr. Jones went on a tear afterward, winning both the Open and U.S. Open that year, which caused one of the few outbursts from Sir Walter.
Why is it whenever I fail to stop this amateur, the rest of you curl up and die too?
With that out of his system, Hagen went to the Jonesless PGA Championship and breezed through the tournament, winning his 3rd straight. When there was no trophy celebration because it was still missing, Walter said that he didn't bring it as he had no intention of losing. And for the people around golf at the time, it seemed as though he wouldn't. Fresh off his winning season, Walter Hagen was involved in another golf event that would become a staple. The first ever Ryder Cup match was held in 1927. Sir Walter spearheaded the competition. He was so confident that he used his money to buy his team uniforms and other required items. He led them to victory, beating Great Britain 9.5 to 2.5 as captain and player. The British wanted a rematch but decided against having it yearly due to travel expenses. Thus, the Ryder Cup would alternate between America and Great Britain every other year. He looked to defend his PGA title at Cedar Crest Country Club in Dallas, where a 15-year-old golf enthusiast's life path was also set in stone. While playing in a closely contested match late in the afternoon, Walter was blinded by the sun, making it difficult to see where he wanted to land his ball. In the crowd, 15-year-old Byron Nelson offered his cap to him. Hagen accepted it, and now able to see the green, he hit the ball close to the hole. The Hague smiled and thanked him. Nelson mentioned that this left a significant impression on him and reinforced his desire to become a professional golfer. Sir Walter reached the finals, where he again wore out his opponent. Walter Hagen won his 4th PGA Championship in a row from 1921 to 1927. He lost only one match in the tournament to Gene Saracen in 1923, achieving a record of 30 wins to 1 loss. He won an outstanding 20 matches in a row during that time. This was his 5th PGA title in just 7 years, and also his last. Hagen was the man at match play golf, but his marriage was another story. His wife Edna enjoyed Walter's fame and money, but struggled to overlook his infidelities. The two eventually divorced, but marriage problems didn't affect his golf, and there's no better example of that than when he played in the 1928 Open at Royal St. George's. After 3 rounds, he led by 1. The Hague shot a 72 for the final round, winning his 3rd Open title. The Prince of Wales, who later became King Edward VIII, handed Walter the claret jug. This friendship, which lasted many years, had an interesting impact on golf. After a round at Royal St. George's, he and the Prince sat down for lunch. However, Walter was denied food. At this point, some British courses allowed the pros into the clubhouse, but not to eat. The Prince sternly looked at the secretary and said,
"If this man is not welcome here, I shall see that the name Royal is removed from your club."
A plate of food was swiftly placed in front of the major champion. A week later, the pair went to St. Andrews, where Hagen was also allowed to eat. The final barrier to professional golfers in Britain was disappearing. Walter had done almost everything in golf except win an Open Championship in Scotland. The 1929 tournament, which took place at Muirfield, was a chance to make that happen. After he and his team lost the Ryder Cup, the Hague wanted some practice before the Open to regain his confidence. He set up an 18-hole match against a local newspaper delivery man. The problem? The man was a great golfer who played on 5 international Scottish teams and knew his local course better than anybody else, having played it hundreds of times. As the two stood on hole 18, Hagen was down 1. He tried to drive the par 4, but his ball sliced off to the right, past the out-of-bounds sign, never to be seen again. Hagen's plan backfired and his ego took another hit, but after years of competitive golf, he knew how to shake off any loss. He entered the Open prepared to face harsh wind, and Walter demonstrated resilience against it. He shot a 75 in the first round. The following day, he set a new course record at Muirfield and a new Open Championship scoring record with a 67. The weather on Friday worsened, and golfers donned heavy gear to stay warm. For the final 2 rounds on the grand stage, the Hague displayed everything that made him a champion: recovery shots, long putts, and that self-assured attitude. When it was over, he was 6 strokes better than second place to win his final Open and achieve his final major victory. After receiving the claret jug, Hagen said, "I'm the proudest man in the world today, and perhaps the luckiest. I've been fortunate enough to win this championship 4 times." At 36 years old, having achieved everything in golf, it was time to go home and put to rest one fantastic golf career. Sir Walter sailed home and was an even bigger hero than when he left. The following year, he took that elevated status, focusing on traveling to places he hadn't been before, like New Zealand, Austria, and Japan. Walter was a massive hit there, and these visits massively impacted the game's growth. After returning home from his long trip, Hagen was victorious in the 1931 Canadian Open, the first tournament he had entered 19 years earlier. However, his time at the top was coming to an end, though he was still getting some wins and competed in a few more Ryder Cups.
Certainly did themselves nobly, I believe, in the golf that they showed today.
His competitive fire faded, and Walter became more interested in heavy drinking. He had some drinks in the previous years, but it was more controlled. Many of his friends claim it was mostly an act to mislead his competitors and impress the crowd. He would show up to a tournament appearing still drunk or at least hungover from the night before, only to play golf as well as anyone had seen. In the 1930s, though, it was no longer an act, but a way of life. With a drink in hand, and as he grew older, Hagen enjoyed spending time with his friends and even won a 5th and final Western Open. This would mark his last significant tournament victory. In 1934, he considered it a great honor to play in his pal Bobby Jones's tournament, the Masters, and did so 4 times, though he never won. The partying and drinking continued, Hagen recalls. I no longer had the urge to spend time practicing. It greatly strained my social life, and I had greater difficulty dropping my ball in the hole. Although he played in the occasional event like the 1940 PGA Championship, Walter Hagen's career was over. He won 44 official tournaments. Moreover, his 11 majors are 3rd most in golf history. He won the PGA Championship 5 times, which is by far the record in the match play era. From 1924 to 1929, he won at least 1 major every year, and from 1919 to 1929, a 10-year post-war period, Hagen won 10 major tournaments. Walter Hagen was everywhere during his golfing prime, but was rarely seen for the remainder of his life. Although he disappeared, he lived well due to sound investments, a valid contract with Wilson, and a pile of cash. He would socialize, but kept his distance from golf and rarely attended events. He was invited to appear on the Shell's Wonderful World of Golf TV program alongside his friend Gene Sarazen, but he declined. As many of his fellow golf competitors were dying off, Walter seemed immune to illness, but that changed when doctors discovered he had throat cancer. The years of heavy smoking and drinking finally caught up with him. After having throat surgery in 1965, he could hardly speak afterward. His fighting spirit was strong, but the cancer would ultimately prevail. It spread to his lungs, and Walter Hagen passed away on October 6, 1969. Sir Walter changed the sport in a way few have before or since. Don't just take my word for it. 2 years before his death, he was honored at a dinner in Michigan. The following were the words of some of golf's greatest players. Ben Hogan said, "Without you, golf would not be what it is today. I give you my deep thanks." Byron Nelson said, "There is no way that we professionals can properly thank you for your great contribution to our profession." Bobby Jones said, "I always enjoyed the many rounds of golf we played together, even when you gave me a good beating." Gene Sarazen said, "All professionals who have a chance to go after the big money today should say a prayer to you." Hagen, who couldn't speak, felt the tears running down his face. Finally, Arnold Palmer spoke. "If it were not for you, Walter, this dinner would be downstairs in the pro shop, not in the ballroom." Indeed, Walter Hagen changed the standing of professionals at clubs and tournaments. He ushered in a new era of golf, one dominated by professionals who earned big money and achieved superstar status. But more importantly for you and me, he massively impacted the game's growth. These golf exhibitions, which totaled thousands all over America and the world, grew the game to incredible heights, while the top amateurs of the day stayed close to their country clubs and inner circles. Sir Walter played anywhere and everywhere, and in doing so, he brought the game of golf to the masses. I talked about how much money he earned during those trips, but Walter would play golf no matter how many people were there to watch, many times on subpar golf courses. I think he just wanted the game to be accessible for everyone. Even his work with Wilson, which I never mentioned, where he played a part in designing numbered sets of mass production irons, helped grow the game. And he did all of that while enjoying his life in a way few have. While some will say Hagen did questionable things in his personal life, no doubt he lived it in a way that most satisfied him, and whenever asked, he spoke fondly about his journey. While there were roadblocks on his way, nothing or no one could stop his rise to the top of the golfing world, and his legacy has impacted the sport in ways we can't even fathom. Hey, thanks for watching this video. Here's a story about one of the best ball strikers in the game's history, although his putting left much to be desired.